Mrs. Jem Webb, Mr. Constantin Kreisler, thank you very much for joining us during this hearing on biodiversity. Mrs. Webb, what are the main issues for the Bonn's meeting on biodiversity?
Well, there's a number of issues. With sticking with the theme of this workshop, I'll focus on the climate change related issues. In terms of climate change, the main focus of this Conference of the Parties is really on building links between different international processes. The Convention on Biodiversity and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change both came out of the Rio process. And they came out of the Rio process as two conventions that had to work together in order to really realize results. And we've moved a little bit away from that over the years. And there's a real push now amongst parties on both sides to start to work together to realize those synergies, to build on the links between biodiversity and climate change. What our parties have realized since the release of the fourth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is that it will be impossible to achieve the objectives of the Convention on Biodiversity without also achieving the objectives of the Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Mm-hmm. And you, Mr. Kreisler, what do you think, what we can reach as a representative of bird life on the side of the NGOs? What could be the message for the European Parliament or for the public opinion to understand why we need biodiversity, to preserve biodiversity?
Clearly, and we hope as BirdLife International that this will be one of the main outcomes of the COP9 in Bonn, that the links between biodiversity and climate change are obvious and they need to be addressed by coherent policies. As European Parliament and as representatives of the European Union, I think we can be very proud about our EU nature legislation. The Birds and the Habitats directives, which have been already adopted quite some time ago, still need to be better implemented, but already now we see that our Natura 2000 network of protected areas is delivering successes for nature, for people, and we need it more than ever in times of climate change, because Natura 2000 is our safety net against climate change impacts.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And what do you think? Do you think it could be possible for the future to have something like Natura 2000 around the world?
There's certainly a strong push. One of the key aspects of the 2010 biodiversity target is to have a network of representative and effective protected areas. And Natura 2000 is an example of how that can be achieved. And I think as we move closer to 2010 and countries start to look at how they can work to meet their targets, to meet their goals, not just under the Convention on Biodiversity, but you have to remember as well that the 2010 biodiversity target has also now integrated into the Millennium Development Goals, into MDG 7. So it's not a biodiversity process now, it's a development process, and Natura 2000 certainly represents a very good example, a very good case study that can very easily and effectively, I think, be replicated in other regions, as long as there's sufficient support from the EU that has this experience to take these lessons and share them with other countries and be open about how the process works, what you need to accomplish it, and also honest about some of the obstacles and the failures so that the countries can avoid making the same mistakes that the EU may have made before finally reaching this point of success.
Thank you. And you, Mr. Kreisler, do you think that Natura 2000 or our two directive on habitat and birds could be in danger?
There have been several calls for reviewing these directives because they are so successful. It is a bit the fact that because we are implementing them on 20% of Europe's territory, Natura 2000 covers 20% of Europe's territory, necessarily there are discussions of how do you implement them. But we're confident that good implementation, proper funding, and this is a big task for the European Parliament to push further for proper financing of Natura 2000, that this will lead to more acceptance and more support for Natura 2000 everywhere, because in a way Natura 2000 sites are our testing sites for sustainable development, which at some point we need to reach everywhere. In 2010 we will have to face the truth whether the European Union managed to halt biodiversity decline. We are quite skeptical about this, and this will mean we have to do even more for nature conservation, and we need maybe have to strengthen the nature directives.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.